my home was already disarray. My client did not go back to prison. He did not. I
Yeah.
was trying to do what was right in my eyes, and it completely spiraled out of control. If they can see the vision, they can understand why I'm hustling so hard.
So, welcome to the J. Sterling Hughes Show. My name is Jeff Hughes, and I'm your host. I have with me a guest today that I am super excited to bring to you. Her name is Deidra Haynes. She is a law firm owner in the Indianapolis market in Indiana. And look, if you're listening to this, just stop for a second because you're going to be blown away with what I'm going to share with you right now. Her story is fascinating. She grew her firm from 129,000 at the end of 2021. She finished 2024 at 2.1 million. And this year, if it holds up for the rest of the year, she's annualizing right now here in 2025 to get to $3.7 million. So, Deidra, I'm so excited to have you on the show. Welcome. Let's hear your story.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. My story often amazes myself, right? It often amazes me because I really did have a lot of doubt in the beginning. At the end of 2021, I was sitting at my office, of course, not having many clients. Again, my revenue was 129,000, which essentially means that I wasn't getting a paycheck. I did have an associate, but she was getting paid more than me. And I was sitting there, had time on my hands. And before I knew it, the night before I had been praying, like, what is the secret for these law firms growing so rapidly? Because I was tired of struggling. And just through prayer, within 24 hours, I said, well, I don't have any clients, I don't have anything to do. So let me just log on to Facebook and scroll Facebook, because that's what we do in our spare time when you don't have clients.
Yeah.
And I came across two individuals, Andy Stickle, Bill Hauser, with SMB. And they were saying how they could 2X and 3X and 10X people law firms, whether it's family law, criminal law, or whatever your practice area would be. And they can take you from a very small revenue to millions.
Okay.
And,
They
no one
proved it with you.
they definitely proved
Yeah.
it. But who really believes that, right? This is social media. There's all kinds of ads out there, but it was $1. So
Yeah.
I'm like, I have $1. I don't have any clients. Let's just go and see what this crock is about, right?
Okay. Yeah. So
And
let me just kind of pause right here because I want to make sure our audience has a really good context of you. Okay, because that story is crazy. We're going to get to it in a second because there's a ton of great detail to unpack there and really exciting stuff. But I want to go back to you graduated from law school. And
yes.
what was your path? Let's go back to that. Like, when did you graduate and what was your path up to that moment? You're sitting and scrolling on Facebook with no clients,
Yeah.
feeling really down. So
Mm.
let's fill that gap in first so people know you're real. You're not just like okay, got it.
Absolutely. So I graduated from law school in 2009, and I took the bar exam. I failed it miserably. And then I eventually passed it the next year. And
Mhm.
I went to what we
When you
call,
failed it, what was going on with your emotionally? Like,
um,
how'd you feel?
yeah, I felt horrible. And I'll tell you, do we want the raw truth on this
Yeah.
podcast? Because
Yes.
I cannot give you the raw truth.
Unfiltered. Let's hear it.
Okay, so I was married at that time. My husband at that time was having an affair on me,
Oh,
and I decided to have an affair back. So, so I was already my home was already disarray, right?
mhm.
I was
Yeah.
having all these emotions. Women were calling the house, and I'm trying to, do revenge tactics, and my brain just was not on the bar
Mhm.
exam,
Yeah.
and so I failed. And that's one thing that I know really did contribute to my failure, because I'm a great studier. I'm not very good at standardized tests, but I
Mhm.
was doing very well with my study process in regards to the bar exam. But
Mhm.
when you have family problems, and you're trying to resolve it on your own, the Bible says a man does what is right in his own eyes. I
Yeah.
was trying to do what was right in my eyes, and it completely spiraled out of control.
Yeah.
And that's why I failed that bar exam. But I got back up. I repented. Told the Lord that, I know that I did wrong. No matter what my ex-husband was doing, bless his heart,
Mhm.
he's passed away now. but I had to do right by
Mhm.
what God wanted me to do.
Yeah, I
And when I
appreciate so much of that part where you're owning your part, you're not blaming, and you're just owning that. I love that in your character.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I was a mess, Jeff, as well. So I have to own my part. But I believe that, God changed me. We communicated.
Mhm,
Um, I understood the heart of the Lord. And I just made a promise to him as I was trying to build this firm, that one, I had to get rid of my bitterness in my heart. Because sometimes when you have these things that's going on, heart issues, it really does and can play over to your business. And I
mhm.
really do think that that had a lot to do with it until I had my heart posture in a right position, repented unto the Lord and saying, you know what, I'm going to focus on me, not revenge tactics, and I'm going to focus on growing the business.
Yeah,
And that's when I just really nailed down and said, I'm going to pass the bar no matter what the distractions are. I'm going to block them all out and
mhm.
I'm going to focus on doing what I believe God called me to do.
So what year was this that you passed the bar?
2010.
Okay, got it.
hmm Yeah, so I graduated from law school 2009 and passed the bar 2010.
Okay, so over this next 11 years until you were on Facebook, tell us what happened. What was going on in your life?
Well, when I got out of law school, I went to Barnes and Thornburg, which they call that's big law here, right?
Uh-huh.
Many, many, many lawyers all across the state of Indiana and other states. And I was able to get in there. I always like to say through a back door because I
Mhm,
got in through a really good friend. His name is Jimmy McMillan. We call him Tic Tac here, but he really did help a lot of African American students and lawyers experience big law firm life.
mhm.
And I went in as a volunteer and I had determined that I am going to work my butt off, that I'm going to be offered a position. And it
Uh-huh.
did happen. I was offered a position there and I was
You
doing employment discrimination.
okay.
One of the largest clients was Taser. So I was like on the side where I was helping the police department justify why they tased someone and death occurred or something in that area.
Okay.
But I I didn't I didn't feel like it was my call,
Mhm.
because I could not get in the courtroom.
Uh-huh.
When you're in big law firm life, you're not gonna get in that courtroom right away. You
No, you're
are
gonna sit your turn, and it's gonna be years.
you're the lowest on the totem pole. And I've often told this story just to a selected few people. And I don't even know if my supervisor was John Maley at Barnes and Thornburg. Absolutely love him. Absolute genius and such a kind-hearted man. And he had my back through all the years that I was at Barnes and Thornburg.
Mhm.
And I don't know if he knows this, because I just buried this in my heart. But one of the junior associates came into my office one day and said, you're not good enough to work here. You're better off as a public defender or a prosecutor, but I don't think this is the right job for you.
Wow.
And so, crushed, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Because
man.
I didn't get that from my supervisor. I was
Yeah.
doing a
What
good job.
what was this person's role in the firm? And, like, what gave him the right to come in and say this?
Who knows?
Oh my
Who
goodness.
knows?
Was he
But he
just
came.
trying to knock you down a peg 'cause he didn't like where you were going or something?
I mean, he was higher on the scale than me. I think he was like on his way climbing to the partnership
Okay.
um, track. And I was just one of the lowest on the totem pole, right? But he definitely closed that door and told
Mhm.
me better off public defender or prosecutor. And we
Mhm.
just don't think. And he said we, but I don't think it was a we. I think that he said this on his own,
Yeah.
that you're a good fit here. Never got this from my supervising attorney, but it was a blow to my heart. And I felt
Wow.
like if they don't want me here, I don't want to be here. So I resigned. I
Mhm.
resigned and I went to work for the government,
Okay.
FSSA. There I did that.
What year was this roughly, Deidra, that you left that firm?
So I was at Barnes and Thornburg, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 2011, 2012, and I stayed there about 2.5, 3 years.
Okay.
And so I mean, I loved it. I had a wonderful supervisor, again, John Maley, who's wonderful. Still love him till this day and taught me a lot. But I did resign and went to the government center,
Okay.
FSSA, and did government work.
Okay.
But I didn't like some of the things that I was seeing behind the scenes, right? And so I stopped the practice of law for a couple
Wow.
years.
What like what? Like what did you see behind the scenes that was
Well,
disappointing?
I felt like trying to trying to
Say
be
it tactfully. So you don't have to name names. Just
yeah.
curious here.
I felt like it was in my opinion, I felt like it was a lot of white collar crime.
Okay.
And I did not want to be associated with it.
Just
And so
corruption and
a lot of corruption in
foolish
my
spending.
opinion.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to rat on anybody. I could totally be wrong in my opinion. I'm a young, attorney out of law school, so I could definitely be wrong.
Mm,
But in my spirit and in my heart, I said something doesn't feel right about this.
yeah.
And so from that position,
I
Jeff,
think it's
I decided,
incredible that you had the intuition to recognize that and not
mhm.
want to associate yourself with that because over time that would seep into your own thinking, right? And it
Oh,
would
absolutely.
change how you saw life. And so removing yourself, that was probably hard financially, but
Oh,
you had
absolutely.
the courage to do that. So well done on that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I just decided, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I started working for an engineering firm, American Structure Point, and I was their contract advisor,
Mhm.
reviewing contracts, and decided,
Like
well,
in-house counsel, basically.
no, I wasn't in-house counsel. It
Okay.
was totally different from law. We were just looking at the contracts and making
Okay.
sure the contracts with construction companies and concrete companies for making roads and bridges and things of that
Yeah.
sort had
Yeah.
the right terms and terminology in there.
Yeah. Okay.
It was boring. I was born a litigator,
Yeah.
and I decided I don't want to work with engineers, so I'm going to go to theology school. And I stopped the practice of
So this
law.
is 15 or 16, right? 2015 or
Yeah,
16? Okay.
yep, somewhere around there.
Okay,
Uh,
so wow, your path is going a whole new direction. You're going to
a
theology
whole
school.
new direction.
Okay.
So I went to theology school, Anderson University, theology school in Anderson, Indiana.
Uh-huh.
And I did that for a year and a half and decided, I think the Christians are lying more than the lawyers.
Oh, man. Oh.
And I decided this is not going to work. But I was going to stick it out. And I did stick it out for a little while. But I had a heart to really understand the Hebrew and the Greek. And I believe the Bible from start to finish. I believe in the prophetic. I believe in apostles, prophets, teachers. I believe in all that the Bible says. But my professor did not believe in the prophets. There was no such
Oh,
thing, right?
wow.
But I really wanted to write about the prophets because that was a passion of mine. I still believe there are prophets today, and most people do not. And I have no problem with people's belief, but
Mhm.
this is my belief, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it away from me.
Yeah.
So I did write the paper. I'm a little stubborn. He told me, if you write this paper, I'm going to fail you. And I wrote the paper anyway, and he failed me.
Okay. Yeah.
And
You follow through on his promise. So, were you pursuing, like, an MDiv or something? Is that what you
I
were
just
pursuing?
no, I was just it was called divinity. It was masters in divinity.
Okay.
That was my pursuit.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to love people, love God and preach the word and making sure that people just knew who the Lord was. People
Yeah.
that understood, God's and Jesus' spiritual walk and that we can walk that same walk with God's help. But again, I'm kind of confrontational, people would say. I have a friend, he tells me I'm aggressive. I like to say assertive. But again, I wrote that paper, Jeff, and he failed me. And I decided, you know what? I'm just going to go back to the law. But I
Mhm.
didn't know how I was going to go back to the law because by this time, I am out the practice of law for about 2 years. And
Okay.
so it's not easy just to pick up and say, let's go
Right.
back into the law
Yeah, you're starting from scratch, probably behind scratch, actually.
behind scratch.
Yeah.
So,
So,
uh,
this is this for context on timeline here. We're about 2016 or 17 at this
yes.
point, right? Okay.
Uh-huh. Yes. So,
Okay.
I'm like, what am I going to do?
So you get
I
your F on your paper. You're
got my
sitting
F
there,
on
you
it.
okay, now what am I gonna do? Okay.
Now what I'm going to do? So I dropped out of theology school. I did not get my divinity and master's degree in theology, but I do have Jesus in my heart, so I feel like He's with me regardless of that piece of paper. But I got home and my husband, because I had remarried, and my husband at the time said, "Why don't you just open up your own law firm?" And I'm
Mhm.
like, I don't want to do that because when you open up your own law firm, you are dependent on that money coming in,
Yeah.
or you may not eat. So I was like, I don't want to do that. So I was applying everywhere I could with my resume, but no one was hiring me. And it's probably
Mhm.
because I had a huge gap in
Yeah.
my resume. And then
Yeah.
who leaves big law firm life, goes to the government, goes to an engineering firm, and then decides theology school? It's
Yeah.
like the double-minded in all my ways and not stable,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. It looks like I mean, that resume looked like someone who just can't make their mind up and just gonna constantly
Absolutely.
change and not be
Yeah.
dependable. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get it. And no one hired me, but thank God nobody didn't. So I decided one day, Jeff, that I was going to go sit in the courtrooms at Hamilton County. It's a county here in Indiana, and
Mhm.
it's located in Noblesville, Indiana,
Is that a
because that's
suburb of Indianapolis?
it is. Yes,
Okay,
it is a
got it.
suburb.
Yep.
And so got up faithfully every day, and I sat in I believe his name was Judge Sturdivant's courtroom every day faithfully, like it was a classroom, and it was a criminal court, right? I had to go in there just to learn and to listen. Almost, I was treated like a classroom. And as I would go in there every day, Jeff, I didn't see Black and brown people represented by Black and brown lawyers.
Mhm.
Um, and it began to kind of bother me a little bit because I was very dedicated to sitting in Judge Sturdivant's courtroom every day.
Mhm.
So I decided I'm going to write the court administrator, and I'm going to tell him what I'm seeing here and ask him, does he have any contracts that he would like to hand out to me or anyone that would be able to help the
My
Black and brown
goodness,
people
that is
be represented
bold.
by Black and brown people?
Yeah, did you even know this administrator? You just said,
No,
"Hey, if you have any contracts, I'm your lady."
I wrote the letter.
Okay,
Went upstairs and handed it to the courtroom administrator, who I did not know at the time was the courtroom administrator.
okay.
Uh, and so I went back downstairs to Judge Sturdivant's courtroom, and my phone sent, I think it was either a text or a voice message, stepped out, and I remember it. The voicemail or the text, I can't remember which one it was, says, "Are you the young lady that is sitting in Judge Sturdivant's courtroom every day?"
Oh my goodness.
So obviously my name was getting around like, who is
Yeah,
this person
yeah.
showing up? This is a classroom. And
You're
I
just
said,
showing up and sitting in the room all day long, watching it,
all day.
learning, soaking it in.
I didn't
Okay, at
have
this
anything.
point, Deidre, were you thinking you were liking family law? You might end up in that direction? Like, what was going on in your mind?
No, I did not have family law in mind
You had
at
not
all.
discovered your calling there yet.
No, I did
Okay.
not discover my calling,
You're
but it
just
was
writing handwritten letters to strangers, and that's kinda what you're doing, learning, okay. Now this judge, was this a family law branch or was a just criminal law?
criminal.
What was it? Oh, criminal,
It was
okay.
criminal law,
Yeah,
right? Because I had this idea that if I go back, I'm going to be the female version of Johnny Cochran. That was my dream, right?
okay.
I'm going to be the female version
Doesn't
of Johnny
fit.
Cochran.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
he said, well, if you're still here, which I was still in the courtroom, come upstairs. I want to interview you.
Wow.
From it happened just that quick. He
Wow.
interviewed me and said, Deidre, we do have some contracts and we would like to offer you a position for X amount of dollars, right?
On that one day in that one day.
On that one day.
Okay.
So
Do you
now
recall how much it was that they were offering?
I believe it was like 40,000. It wasn't much,
Okay.
but I was at zero.
Yeah, so you've
So
made okay.
0 to 40, it was
So was this
enough.
a full-time role, or was this like a 1099 role where you were just given
Yeah,
cases?
1099.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I was a
this
contract.
wasn't necessarily a full-time role. This was just some revenue coming in.
There was revenue coming in. However, it definitely felt like a full-time role because we're dealing with public defender clients who don't
Okay.
have to pay, right? So,
Yeah.
they have time on their hands to ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Uh, so though it wasn't full-time, it felt full-time. But what I decided, I said, well, if
So
this
what were you making back at the big law firm? Do you remember?
I don't recall what I was making. I think it was around 70,
Okay.
80,000.
So double
Yes,
what you're making in this role. A couple
absolutely.
years later even. Okay, so
Yeah,
you've taken a
absolutely.
big pay cut at this point to
Yes, a
get where
big pay,
you're at. Okay.
absolutely. And so I decided, you know what? If this letter worked in Hamilton County for contract work, maybe I'll do the same in Marion County, which is Indianapolis, Indiana. But I had to change the words because Indianapolis, Indiana is very diverse. So I couldn't come in with the same, I don't see black and brown lawyers representing black and brown people.
Mm-hmm.
But what I did was I wrote a very similar letter to the chief PD office.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, listen, my name is Deidra. My name is Deidra. It was Grigsby at the time, Deidra Grigsby. And I am looking for contract work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he knew me. I can't, his name is slipping my mind at this time, but the chief public defender, he knew me. He knew me
Okay.
from law school because I did a lot of trial practice in and out of courtrooms at the Marion County Courthouse. And he said, you know what, Deidra, I remember you from trial practice. He said, why don't you come tomorrow? Because I think I have an open position for you, right?
Wow. Okay.
So I'm like, this is
So did
good.
you handwrite this letter like you did the first one, or did you type this one up?
No, I hand wrote it.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I love the guerrilla marketing you're doing here. Oh, this is getting even better. Okay. All right. So he says come in the next day and you're all
Yep.
poised to come in.
Yes, and it was Mr. Hill. That's his name, Mr. Hill. So I met with Chief Public Defender Hill, and I met with him. He said, Deidra, I have a dual role. It is in the 4D court, child support 4D.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of quasi criminal, quasi family law.
Okay.
Because it's child support issues. We're only handling child support. But if the individual they're not paying the child support, they're going to go to jail.
Okay.
So I had to work kind of like in a family law and a little bit in criminal law to keep my clients out of jail and explain to the judge, why they're not paying child support.
Okay.
And he offered me that position on the spot. So now I'm at 40,000 in somewhere around, I believe I'm not mistaken, 40,000 in Hamilton. I think it was 30,000 in Marion County. So now I'm at 70,000.
Wow.
Right?
Okay, you're almost back.
I'm almost back, but it was a lot of work.
Sure.
Now, I started falling in love with the family law portion versus the criminal law.
And you're spending all day, every day in court in these roles.
All day.
Yeah. So you're sharpening your litigation skills
very quickly.
Yeah.
Very quickly. Okay. And most of the times I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to give it my all. And you know what, Jeff? Clients want to see that you're giving it your all. We're not perfect. No lawyer is perfect. We're going to make mistakes. But I had such a passion and drive because most of my clients and in the child support court were men who were put on child support, who were either coming out of jail and was behind or lost their job or just struggling to make ends meet to pay the child support. So I was fighting like hell for these men. And and oftentimes I would see my clients who were male clients cry. Like, Deidra, I can't go to jail. If I go to jail, I'm going to lose the job. If I lose the job, I'm going to be more behind. It was just a repetitive cycle. And my heart was slowly breaking for these gentlemen. And I decided one day, I think I kept both contracts for about a year and a half, maybe 2. And I went to my judge. And at the time, my judge was Judge Najjar in Hamilton County. And I said, Judge Najjar, which I love him to this day as well, because he helped me a great deal walk through my process of getting back on track.
Yeah.
But I went to Judge Najjar and I said, I'm going to resign. And Jeff, let me tell you why
So this is about 2019, if I'm doing the math right.
Yes.
Okay, so we're not into COVID yet. We're the year before COVID.
Year before COVID.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
All right. What happened?
So I'm praying because I'm a praying woman. And I'm praying and I'm saying, I'm exhausted because I have public defender clients in Hamilton County and Marion County, and it was a heavy load. I'm extremely exhausted. And I just prayed. I said, you know what, God, I really want to grow my private practice. And I really had my own private practice because I didn't work like as an employee for the public defender agency. I was a contract attorney. But it was mostly in Hamilton County, my caseload for criminal law was outrageous.
Right.
And I just
If you're making 70, just to put this in context, you've got to pay double the tax out of that. You're paying employer side and employee side.
Oh,
and you're
absolutely.
handling all your own expenses, all your gas, your all that. So you're not making 70 grand. You're probably making 40 grand and you're working 2x that.
A 2x that, maybe 3x that.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I was not wealthy or out of poverty by any means. But as I was praying, Jeff, I believed in my spirit that I heard the Spirit of the Lord say, resign, and
Mhm.
I'll help you build this law firm. Now, you don't tell a lot of people that you're hearing the voice of the Lord. People gonna think you're crazy. Like, okay, now Deidre needs to put on medication because she's saying she's hearing the voice of the Lord,
Mhm.
right? I don't share that with my colleagues. That I really do believe I have a connection with with the with Jesus, the Holy Spirit. But
Mhm.
I did go to Judge Najjar and I said, I'm resigning and I'm giving this all back. And I'm just going to focus on private practice. And
Mhm.
that's what I did. I gave the contracts back and I met a really, really good friend. Um, and his name is Vic Indiano. He's a patent attorney. So nothing to do with anything that I want to do.
Yeah.
And he took me in his office. He said, listen, you're African American, you're pretty, you're smart, and you can do this. He said, you're going to get clients like nobody's business. Now, who goes and encourage somebody that you're pretty, you're African American, you're smart, you're going to get a lot of clients.
Yeah.
But for some reason, Jeff, I was like, you know what? I am pretty, I am smart, and I am going to get these clients. And the clients that I had when I was a public defender contract attorney
Uh-huh.
began to hire me as their private attorney.
Wow. Okay.
And my firm began to, build a little bit because now
Uh-huh.
I'm at 129,000 on my own without any contract. So,
Yeah.
still feel good about myself,
Yeah.
but by no means am I out of the area of being broke. So I'm still praying, asking the Lord, what can I do to kind of grow this firm? And that where it goes back to me getting on social media
Mhm.
after praying and saying, God, please help me find a way because there's a secret to growing law firms and no one is willing to tell me. People will not share their secrets. Not in Indiana. I didn't learn these secrets here. I had people like Jen Gore, Mike Morris, uh, John Barry tell me the secrets on how to grow a law firm, along with
Yeah.
Bill Hauser and Andy Stickle.
So I
Now,
want to hear about all that because I want you to share all those secrets for folks that are listening. So, but
absolutely.
I have a gap in time. I'm in 2019 in your story. You're going off on your own, and these clients that you had previously when you were doing the PD work and the child support work, they started to hire you. Did you get a website going? Did you like form a law firm? What happened there?
No, I didn't have a website at that time when everything started going, right? I
Yeah.
just had word of mouth. This is why
Okay.
word of mouth is very, very important.
Yeah.
And you're working hard in that courtroom, no matter if you're making $400 an hour or you're making $22 an hour in the courtroom that nobody
Yeah.
knows you're the broke attorney.
Yeah.
It was my hard work, my passion, my dedication that people who were sitting in the gallery said, who is this person? So when I would walk out, people would run out behind me, like, so do you take private cases? Oh, absolutely. And I had the face on, Jeff. Absolutely, I take
Yeah.
private cases. You need some help? And that's how my
Wow.
clientele
Okay.
began to build just by word of mouth and my dedication in the courtroom.
Okay. So you get through what was 20 like during the COVID year? Was that a good year, a bad year? How'd that work out for you?
It's the best year ever.
Okay.
It was the best year ever for me. Now, we're not quite to, me in marketing and knowing Bill and Andy yet, but it
Yeah.
was the best year because people wanted to divorce their spouses. They wanted to get away from their spouses. And I think COVID did that because now everyone's stuck in the house together.
Mhm. Yeah.
And whatever issues they had, they couldn't bury it by leaving out the house and going to work because now people are working from home. And so people are wanting to file motions to just separate or divorce. And my practice started building on those two issues alone because people were sick and tired, right?
Yeah.
Or they were having issues with do they want to give their children the COVID shot? That was a
Mhm.
really big issue. And
Wow.
so a lot of my clientele built with that because the mother may want to give the shot and the dad does not, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of litigation. A lot of individuals was calling the law firm, needing that help on who's right or who's wrong.
Yeah.
And
Did you
so
did you find yourself representing one side of that argument versus
yeah,
the other?
I did. I found myself representing more men than women. And now this is why, because men, you don't have to give them much. It's the women who are always yelling and arguing and bickering over any and everything. So when I represented the men, they went out and told their male friends, and their male friends told another male friend. And so my practice was building as a male clientele.
Yeah. Were
And
were the
so
guys more inclined not to get the shot, or were the women?
the women were inclined that they didn't want their babies to get the shot.
Okay.
Understand, there were so many ups and
Yeah, I mean,
downs.
I get it. I have 6 kids and none of us got the shots.
Yeah,
We didn't
and I
really
didn't
need.
get the COVID shot.
Yeah. Okay,
I
so
did not.
you're in 20 and 21,
Mhm.
and you hired an associate somewhere along the way there.
Yes, yes,
Okay,
and
that baffles me because you're not making a lot. Why'd you do that?
because I had so many cases were coming out of the woodwork. I couldn't handle.
Okay.
I was gonna commit malpractice, and lose my bar license, and God forbid, I didn't wanna do that because where else would I turn?
Yeah.
So, and Stephanie Colombo was my first associate. She does not mind me telling her story. In fact, we just hired another attorney yesterday, and we told her story at that interview, and so she doesn't mind me telling the
Okay.
story. But I hired her for 40,000. Now, this is no money at all. I hired her for 40,000. And I said, and she was a young attorney,
Okay.
just passing the bar. Nobody would hire her, and nobody wanted me, right?
Okay.
So we became like a duo together, right?
Yeah.
She needed a job and I needed help. And so I made her a promise. I said, Stephanie, if you stick with me, I promise that as this law firm grow, your income will grow. And
Mhm.
she is over six figures right now. She's
Oh,
at
that's
six figures
awesome.
right now.
Yeah.
And I kept that promise. And she helped me to grow the law firm when I had nothing. She believed in me. She saw my vision. She knew my heart. And all she wanted was somebody to teach her. Now, because we had these clients, we would go to court together. So she
Mhm.
would see me in action and she was learning,
Oh,
right?
wow.
And then
Yeah.
I could sit with her as first chair and I could whisper, object there,
Yeah.
no, that's not an objection, no object there. And so she was learning and she loved the hand holding. And again, I was able to take some pressure off me because I could give her some of these cases where she was sitting first chair.
Yeah.
And so I really did not have my own income. So at one point, Stephanie Colombo was actually making more money than the owner of the law firm.
Well, if you finish the year of 2021 at 129,000, you're paying her 40, which meant it cost you 65,000 to have her, at
Yeah.
least minimally, with like nothing else on top of that. And then you got to
Mhm.
pay all your other expenses. You're not making anything.
Oh no,
Like,
I was married at the time, so thank God. Or I probably
yeah.
would have been living back in a shelter.
Yeah. My goodness. Okay. Okay. So I think we're at the part now where it gets really, really crazy. And
Yes.
you're scrolling Facebook and you see an ad for take it from there. What happened?
I saw an ad for SMB. The
Okay.
owners of SMB, Bill Hauser and Andy Stickle, and they were promoting how they can take law firms from no revenue to millions. And of course, I had my doubts. I did, but I had a dollar. I had a dollar, Jeff, and so I was like, I'm going to spend this dollar, and I'm going to join this Zoom, this little Zoom event for 5 days.
Mhm.
They was having it for 5 days, and
It was
Jeff,
a 5-day seminar for a buck.
for a buck.
Okay.
And they actually still do these seminars, but now they're free.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So I got on,
These
and at the end of every session, because it was 8 hours every day,
wow.
but I didn't have anything to do. I mean,
Stephanie was doing all the work and you're trying to to make some money.
how much money for us, right?
Yeah.
And so at the end of every session, Jeff, I swear to God, I would hear the Spirit of the Lord say, you cannot afford not to invest in these two men. And I'm
Mhm.
like, is this me thinking this? or is this really the Holy Spirit, right?
Hmm.
Because I'm thinking it's not going to cost that much, right? If God has me on this Zoom, it can't cost as much because he knows I'm broke.
Hmm.
Um, by the time we got to, and every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I would hear this. The first 3 days, it was about mindset. And I'm thinking,
Wow.
I don't need to know about mindset. I go to church. I understand mindset, right? I just wanted to get to how do I make money for this law firm? And
So
I remember,
they knew that it starts with what's between your ears before you can grow. You've
absolutely,
got to get that figured out. So they spent 3 of the 5 days just dealing with you getting your
mindset,
head right. Yeah.
absolutely.
Wow.
And I, s- I typed in the little chat. I was like, when are we going to get to making money or something like that? And I remember Bill Hauser said, we can never get to making money until your mindset is adjusted.
Mhm.
And there's hundreds and hundreds of lawyers on here, and I felt like now I'm called out, and now I look like the stupid one because I'm just worried about money and not my mindset. Because I really didn't know that it really does take a mindset shift before you can really understand the growth of where you're
Yeah.
trying to get at. I didn't
Yeah.
know that. I knew that in the spiritual realm, you have to change your mindset. You have to really work because that's the battleground, right? That's where the enemy comes to attack. I understood the spiritual side of it, but
Mhm.
clearly the same mindset is not for business,
Yeah.
but it is.
Well, hello, Jeff here. My team and I put out a weekly newsletter designed for family law practitioners to help you grow and build your practice. So if you go to my website at jsterlinghughes.com, that's Hughes, that's jsterlinghughes.com, and subscribe, it would mean the world to me. And what I will do for you there is I will send you weekly content to help you build and grow your practice, as well as news and developments in the greater world of family law. Thank you, and back to the show.
So that fifth day, Friday, they are now going to tell us how much it is to join S&B.
Okay.
And it was a lot of money. It was like $70,000. I'm
Oh
like,
my. All
clearly,
up front? 70 grand?
you could do payment plans.
Okay,
You could do
sure.
payment plans. They were going to work with everyone on there. Um, but I didn't have $7, not alone $70,000, right? And so the next the next following week, which is a Monday, a
Mhm.
lawsuit came through for because I did employment discrimination as well to settle a case.
Oh, wow.
And the certain amount that I needed, I gave it all. And I'm telling you, when I tell you my husband at the time was so mad at me, rightfully so, right? I
Yeah.
don't know who Bill and Andy are, and I'm just gonna give up this money. But you know what? What I did know is that I knew I know how to hear God's voice. And my prayer was, if I'm wrong, but I do believe this is you, God.
Mhm.
And I said, you know what? I'm giving all of this money to Bill and Andy, and I'm going to believe in this process. And
Mhm.
I gave it all, Jeff. Now, some people may say today that that was the most foolish thing. And now that I'm looking back, I probably would have been like, maybe that was foolish, but I had nothing to lose.
Mhm.
I didn't have the 70,000 anyway. Um, so I might as well go ahead and invest it because I probably would have blew it on something,
Yeah.
knowing me. So I gave it all, and
Or
I
spend it
remember
on groceries.
or
Yeah.
spending on groceries. And then
Okay,
not only having
so
that,
do you recall, was this at the end of 21, beginning of 22? When was
it
it?
was December of 2021.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
Okay, so you join the group and you get into 22, and then, like, you must have, like,
and
stepped on rocket
boom.
fuel because then things take off. So describe the journey from basically 129K to
Yeah,
$2.1 million in 3 years. 22,
absolutely.
23, 24.
Now, I'll tell you this. Bill and Andy forewarned everyone on that Zoom that this is not going to be an overnight process. You got to let marketing work. You got to let the analytics kind of get into the system so that your name can come get out there. So
Mhm.
we was not expecting, none of us was expecting us to hit, the cash right away within a month or 2 months. We knew it was going to take anywhere between 3 to 6 months to kind of build up the marketing.
Yeah.
However, within 5 days, my phone skyrocketed. It skyrocketed so much that I fell into depression because so many people were calling my law firm. I don't know what Bill and Andy did with the marketing,
Mhm.
but it took off like nobody's business.
So
And
you don't know what platforms or where they started on the marketing?
I don't.
Wow.
All I
Okay.
knew, all I
So
knew was my phone was ringing.
well, I've discovered over the years that getting the phone to ring is not that hard, but answering it and doing that well is where it gets really difficult. So, how did
Yes.
you handle that explosion of calls, like, internally? Like, what did you do?
Okay. So this is amazing. I had a client that I represented, and I won't say his name, but I represented him, and he he had a criminal case. And my friend David Page, attorney David Page, helped me with this case because it was really out of my league.
Mhm.
But he had ran off on probation and parole. And so this is a big case, right? And I had represented him, and for some way, somehow, through prayer and fasting, because me and my client fasted together like for 10 days before our court date.
Wow.
We fasted and we was going to believe God that he was not going to go back to prison. And Jeff, my client did not go back to prison. He
You
did not.
fasted for 10 days with your client.
Fasted with my client.
Wow.
And maybe
Did you
one,
have
maybe
dry
one.
mouth in court that first day?
I was so scared. I mean, I was sweating bullets, and I'm thinking,
And starving too. You're probably just ready to eat.
Jeff, let me tell you, when I got, because I had already researched what that judge looked like because it was in Portridge, Indiana, which is like 3 hours up by Chicago.
Okay.
So I wanted to know what the judge looked like, kind of his political views, and I'm really putting this judge in prayer, right? When I got to the courtroom, the judge came out, and there was a pile of cookies there. He loved lemon cookies, right? And he offered me a lemon cookie. Now I'm fasting. I'm like, this is the devil. He is not going to break this fast before I go before this court.
Yeah.
But I said to myself, enjoy this cookie with this judge because this is the judge you finna sit before. So you don't want to say no to this judge. So
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is my favorite cookie. I hate lemon cookies.
And if you're gonna
Every
break a fast, you don't wanna break it on something you hate. You wanna go get, like, a big steak or something to make it worthwhile. Yeah.
this day he said, my staff hate lemon cookies too. I was like, well, it's just me and you, judge. We're gonna enjoy these cookies together. And I'm thinking to myself, no, I hate lemon cookies too. But I shared that cookie with him. Uh, we got in that courtroom, and the similar cases was he was sending people back to prison left
Mhm.
and right. I knew that my client at that time was going to go to jail, and hopefully, maybe one day you can interview me and this client because we have shared our story at prison ministries all over the state of Indiana
Wow.
as well. And he looked at me and he said, I'm not going back to prison, Deidra, because the Lord said that if I hired you, that this was going to be a time where God was going to trust me and trust you, and I'm not going back. And I'm thinking, please don't blame this on the Lord if I lose this case.
God's like,
We're
"What
just
did
going
I
to take
do? You're the one that skipped out on your bail."
I was like, please do not put Jesus in the mix
Yeah.
of this. Yeah. But when we got up there, I had the whole team, the prosecutors, the parole department, the probation department. They were all against me. It was just little old me, right? And they had the most outstanding arguments. So I knew I was like buried. But in the midst of me finna open my mouth, I could hear the Spirit of the Lord tell me, change your whole argument. Now, Jeff, it's a three-hour ride from Indianapolis to Portage, Indiana.
Mhm.
So I'm practicing what I'm gonna say, right? And when I got there to defend my client, the Spirit of the Lord said, change it. I want you to talk about rehabilitation. And I didn't even think about that at all. But my client at the time, he had went to college. No, all
Mhm.
the time he was on the run. He had went to college. He had got married. He became an ordained pastor, ordained minister. I'm sorry,
Mhm.
ordained minister. He didn't get in any more trouble since the time that he was on the run. And I just began to talk about how he was able to rehabilitate himself through having good company and
Mhm.
putting himself back into a prison is just going to cause corruption
Yeah.
where he has made all these positive strides. I don't know how we did it. I still to this day don't believe we did it. I believe the Lord was looking down on us and said, this man does not deserve to be go back to prison. He did not go back to prison, and this goes back to my story. How did I handle the calls? This client called me up and said, Deidra, I can't find a job.
Oh,
Would
wow.
you mind if I maybe come in and answer your phones? And I was like,
Mm.
well, I don't have any money to hire you. I mean, I can probably hire you at minimum wage.
Yeah.
But at this time, he is a convicted felon, right? He
Yeah.
done escaped all these probation and parole issues. So it was difficult for him to find a position. And he came in for minimum wage.
Wow.
And when I tell you he was the best receptionist and bill collector I have ever met in my life, my client helped me grow the firm and answer the phones.
Wow.
And I believe I am a law firm of second chances. I believe it. And we're friends to this day. We have traveled together. We have done prison ministry together, sharing this story,
What a
which is
bond.
almost unbelievable. Like
Yeah.
you hired your client who did XYZ because it was no light crime
Yeah.
that he was involved in.
Sure.
So I had to really put my trust in him. But that phone started ringing, and we went from $129,000 at the end of 2021, and by the end of 2022, we made $554,000.
Wow. Okay. So did you hire another attorney during that year, or was it just you and Stephanie?
No, just me and Stephanie.
Okay. So you get into 23. What happened
Yes.
in 23?
We're still growing. We're still growing. We're hiring now paralegals. We're hiring an intake department, which is through it's called attorney assistant,
Mhm.
which is a component of S&B. So S&B and attorney assistant, they work very close and hand in hand.
Okay.
So they were teaching me about now because these phones are ringing, you cannot just have the receptionist answering all these phones. Let the receptionist do what the receptionists do. You need an intake department to kind of get you guys off the phone. Because Jeff, I would answer the phone. This is Lucille. How can I help you? I was every name in the book because I didn't want people to know it was Deidre.
Yeah.
So
So
I had to
Lucille
really
was your
make
alias. That was your
absolutely.
okay.
So I had to make a game out of this, right? Because if I was finding that once I said this is Deidre, I was giving out free advice all the time.
Yeah.
And I was losing people because I'm a talker, and
Mhm.
I was just giving them what to do in the court. And you can go represent yourself in court, and people are doing it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Wait a minute,
It's not how this
not
is
you."
supposed to work here. It's not what I had in mind. So, okay, so in 23, did you hire another attorney to help you?
Yes, we started hiring attorneys.
Okay.
We hired one more, and I can't remember who it was at that time, but then we had myself, Stephanie, and another attorney,
Okay.
and we had paralegals because now my client, who was the receptionist, then became a paralegal. So he was kind of moving up the
Uh-huh.
ranks with us, right?
Yeah.
So he became the paralegal for us, and it was really good. I mean, he's good at what he does. He's in the insurance industry now. And then we had our intake department.
Wow. Okay. So in 23, do you recall what you ended the year with from a revenue
Yes.
standpoint?
Yep, I wrote this number down. In 23, we ended at $751,059.
Okay. 751. Wow. And so you had you and two other attorneys working with
Yes.
you on your team at that point. Okay.
Yes.
Wow. What an amazing. So you're just to kind of understand the operations a little bit. You had some paralegals, you had an
Mhm.
intake, basically a vendor that was handling all your intake calls for you. So
Yes.
SMB was doing your marketing, driving the calls to the vendor. The vendor would answer them, and then they would
Mhm.
set the initial consultations with you, with Stephanie, or your other attorney that was with you at that point, right?
Correct. Yes.
And so you, as the leader, you're trying to hire, train, keep all of that stuff going. So you were you like running wild? Was your hair on fire? What was going on with you during that year?
Absolutely. So my team will tell you that I would get up every morning at 3 a.m. and I wouldn't go to bed that night until 9. This became a regular schedule for me. It became my normal life to the point where I did have colleagues because sometimes when I'm up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I do make a post on Facebook like I'm up, I'm so tired, but I'm fighting for my clients, right? and it's all strategic, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I want my opposing counsels to know while you are asleep, I'm working this
You're
case.
going.
But I also
Yeah.
want my clients to know I'm up working on these cases because I'm a hard worker.
Yeah.
Uh, where it did, it was not work-life balance. But this is what I had to do to survive.
You're in a
Where
season
I
of
did,
life where you have to do that.
you have to
Yeah,
do
you
it.
can't yeah, you don't have work-life balance at some seasons, and you're in that the
No,
throes of
not at all.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay,
It
so
it
are you during 23 when you went from 550 to 750
mhm.
in revenue, were you attending seminars with SMB or what was going on there?
Yes, so I was attending seminar because Bill Hauser, he teaches the business aspect of how to run and operate a law firm.
Yeah.
Andy is over the marketing.
Okay.
So on Tuesdays, Bill would teach every Tuesday, as part of the SMB team. You are being taught by Bill what things to do, what should be the next hire,
Mhm.
which became Deidra, you need an assistant for you, right?
Yeah.
And Andy was teaching about
You
marketing,
hired
what
your
they're
first assistant in 23 for you personally?
in 23 I did.
Okay,
Yes.
got it.
Yeah. In 23 I hired my first assistant and
So
I
you're
needed it.
learning I mean, I'm just fascinated here with not the practice of law as much as I am with the building the business of your firm here. So 23 seems like a pretty important year because you're learning how to lead, you're learning how to hire, you're learning how to fire, you're learning how
Mhm.
to evaluate vendors, all of that
Yes,
sort of stuff. And you still need to train your associates to make sure they're serving your clients well.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It was I felt like my hair was on fire. In fact, I don't even really think like, I would go to sleep, but I never felt like I was asleep
Mhm.
because my brain was always thinking about what is Bill saying? What am I supposed to do tomorrow? I was asleep, but I wasn't asleep, and I
Mhm.
did this for many months
Did you have
and
a full
almost
caseload throughout 23?
Oh, yes.
Okay, you had a full caseload and you have your business responsibilities at keeping the
Yes.
firm afloat. Wow.
Yes.
Okay. So you get in, you finish out 23,
Mhm.
750K. By the way, congratulations on that. In 2 years, that's pretty crazy. You get into 24, and you had to have massive growth in 24 to get to 2.1 million. You went from
Yes.
770 or 751 to
Uh-huh.
2.1 million last year. We're in March
Yes.
of 25 right now, recording this, by the way. Okay. So what happened to take you from 750 to over a million?
Okay.
Over
So
2
I
million,
started
excuse me. Yeah.
yes, 2.1 million. So I started faithfully attending more mastermind meetings, not for family law,
Okay.
but for personal injury. So, I started attending more events with Jen Gore, Mike Morris, John Berry. I was at these personal injury events as a family law attorney with no interest in personal injury. But because these personal injury lawyers have such a business mind, I said I can take what they're teaching at these mastermind events and I can apply it to my family law. And so that's what I did. I saw those PI attorneys get up there and talk about how they just, got a client, $5 million. And of course, that's not going to happen in family law.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, I can use those same techniques that they're doing in regards to business, and I can apply it to family law. And if I really follow this blueprint, because I'm telling you, Jeff, I did not go there to drink. I did not go there to party. I went in there as a student. And
Uh-huh.
when I tell you I had hand cramps because I had to get this information because these mastermind conferences are not cheap.
No, yeah. So I want to point out something brilliant that you did here because this we can't overlook the value of this. In the B2C world that we live in, so the law firm that serves clients, not businesses, okay? At the
Uh-huh.
top of the pecking order are the PI lawyers because that's where the most money's at. And so you're going to find the most cutting edge strategies, concepts, thinking, all of that right there. So the
Yes,
fact that you recognize that you want to go learn from the absolute sharpest lawyers, that whole thing. And from a business
yes,
standpoint, not from the practice of law. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the
mhm,
business running a law firm
yes.
standpoint. You went right to that. And that was just brilliant.
Thank you.
And
Thank
then you're
you.
taking those like samurai skills and you're bringing them back to family law where, the business acumen isn't as great, frankly. It's just, that's the way
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
that's so
It's
true.
different. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow.
And I just said, you know what? If it works for them, it can work for me. It's just a different area of law, but the same business concepts, the same business strategies.
Yeah.
And I had so many individuals support me. One of the things that John Barry told me, he said, Deidra, who is also my mentor, he said, Deidra, your name is known as someone who takes advice and implements it. And this is why I'm willing to help you.
Hmm.
You know, Mike Morris, he has this fireproof um, mastermind group, and he allowed me to get in that group for free.
Wow.
I mean, that's a pretty
He saw
expensive.
something in you. He saw this hustle and this fire in your belly that it's just rare. It's hard to find
Yeah,
that.
it really is. And I tell
People
you,
like him will always help someone that's got that kind of just
yes,
drive to succeed because you want to be around
absolutely.
those people.
You do. You want to be around them. And I have visited all their law firms and took my law firm to each one of their law firms because I need them to see the vision. It's
Yeah.
better when people can see it for themselves than for me to say, listen, I went to Mike Moore's law firm or Jen Gore in Atlanta or John Barry. If they can see the vision, then they can understand why I'm hustling so hard.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what happened. So Jen Gore took me under her wing as well. And I remember I was getting a little anxious. I was like, maybe I should dabble into PI a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And we explored that. And I got to Jen Gore. I bought my plane ticket, got to Jen Gore because Jen Gore was going to teach me about personal injury for I bought the ticket for 3 days. I was going to be with her for 3 days. Once I got there, I was telling her about the law firm, about the family law component, and she said, "Unfortunately, I'm not going to teach you PI." I'm like, "What? I did not buy this ticket out here not to learn PI, right?
Uh-huh.
You're going to teach me PI." And she was stern. She was adamant. You don't have your house in order for family law to bring in a different area of practice. You will destroy what you've built.
Yeah.
Although it's not all the way together, but you will completely destroy that trying to build a PI practice because you want to be like PI lawyers.
Yeah.
If that's not your passion, if that's not your heart, Deidre, stay in your lane. And this is why I love Jen Gore, is because she is not a yes woman. She is my mentor and my coach. And I always like to tell her she missed out on her calling to be a therapist as well
Wow.
because
That was a
she has,
ton of wisdom.
yeah, ton of
Wow.
wisdom.
So in 24, how many lawyers did you end the year with last year?
24. I ended the with five, but really four practicing because I'm still a lawyer,
Yeah.
right? Four practicing. I don't have a caseload in 2024 at all,
Okay.
um, and I'll tell you why. I had accomplished another goal. I went to a SMB event, which we have it every 6 months or so. And Bill and Andy came up with this step system. Like you start off as a law student, then you start off as a solo, and then really you're just an employee of your own law firm, and then you become a CEO, and then you become no, you become an owner, then you become a CEO, right?
Uh-huh.
And I fell below the line, and below the line, which like law school, solo, then private practice. It was called the abyss. Now, the that term in the Bible
Yeah.
means you're in hell,
Yeah.
and I was like, I am not staying below this line. I refuse to stay below this line, and so I set myself a goal, and I said I'm going to climb up this step that Andy and Bill created, and I'm going to become a CEO, real owner. I don't want to
Yeah.
become an employee. I want to become the CEO because the CEOs are working on the business and not in the business. And I just stuck that in my brain. I put it on a sticky note on my computer, and I
Wow.
said, "This is what I'm going to do." And it was a lot of hard work. I received a lot of my colleagues telling me, "You have no work-life balance, Deidre. I think that you're really, you know, walking a thin line."
Uh-huh.
They saw me up at 3 a.m. and going to bed at 9 a.m. And I was walking a thin line. But what they did not fail to realize, Jeff, is that I had the Lord on my side. I wasn't doing this. It is impossible. I look back today and I don't know how I did this. It was only the strength of the Lord that would wake me up at 3 a.m. and I can go to bed at 9 and get right back up at 3 and be
Wow.
power driven.
That's
And
incredible. So in 24, just a couple, I'm doing the quick math here. You had 4 lawyers that collected 2.1 million. So that's about 500 per lawyer, which is incredible in hourly practice for one. And
mhm,
I'm assuming some of those are somewhat newer attorneys and they don't have a years of experience and didn't bring a bunch of cases with them, right? So far?
yeah,
Okay.
mhm,
And you went from having a full caseload at the beginning of 24 to having no caseload at the end of 24, sitting in a CEO role, basically overseeing and orchestrating the entire firm and leading it. You did
yes.
that in 1 year.
I did that in 1 year.
That is amazing. You know how many lawyers I meet who can't get that accomplished over 5, 6, 7, 8 years?
I know.
That's
And
very
this
special. So, as you look back on last year in 24, what advice would you have for someone that wants to go from where you were at the end of 23 to where you were at the end of 24? So what are the
mhm,
best practices? What'd you observe? I mean, they could be anything. What would that
yeah.
be?
That you must have coaches, you must have mentors, and you have to listen to what they say. They've been there. They've done that. If you just want to hang around them because they're very famous PI attorneys like a Mike Moores or John Berry or Jen Gore, they're very famous PI attorneys. If you just want to do that for the clout and just say, I've been rubbed elbows,
Mhm.
you're not going to get anything out of it.
Yeah.
You have to go in this thing like a student. So my advice is if you want to go from where I went, it is possible. If God can do it for me, he can do it for anyone. He reigns on the just and the unjust just alike.
Mhm.
It is all about what is in between here.
Yeah, your
You
ears.
gotta listen. You gotta listen. You gotta obey, even if you don't think it is good advice. I didn't think Jen was giving me good advice when she said, "I'm not gonna teach you PI." Why can't I have a piece of this pie?
Mhm.
But it was excellent advice. She knew what it meant to build a law firm. And so I didn't want to crash. So I
Mhm.
listened to things even when I disagreed because I saw her history. I
Mhm.
saw John Barry's history. I saw Mike Morris's history. This is not some mystical magic. It is about listening and doing and putting the effort in. It's going to be a lot of effort, but you got to do it.
So I see so many folks struggle with that ability to completely suspend their doubt, suspend their defensiveness and all that sort of, and just say, I'm going to listen and I'm going to execute. I'm going to implement, implement, implement. What have you always been that way? Is that a switch that you had to force yourself to turn? Like what was going on emotionally that you got to that point where you're willing to do that?
Well, I think I've always been this way. Just because I grew up homeless, um, in and out of juvenile detention, walking the streets, trying to find a place to eat, trying to find a place to sleep. So I had to be a person who was very aggressive in where I wanted to go.
Hmm.
But building a, a practice, a law practice was different for me because I didn't come from this type of world. So someone saying that you can make $1 million, which is nothing by the way, right? Someone saying you make $1 million to someone, an African American young child who was a high school dropout, dropped out of college, in and out of juvenile detention, homeless, teenage mother, that sounds like very far-fetched. You're just trying to get my money.
Yeah.
And you don't want me to get to the end of the
It
road.
doesn't sound believable.
Doesn't sound believable. And you know what, Jeff? If people walk away from hearing this podcast and don't hear anything else, I need them to know that not only did I build this law firm, but I built this law firm because the Lord helped me. It is very important for me to get that out. God helped me build this law firm because He had to. There's a scripture that says, "Help thy unbelief."
Hmm.
Help thy unbelief. I did not believe, but my prayer every night was, God, I don't know who these people are. I have all this doubt, but help thy unbelief. And I would go to bed. Wasn't saying extravagant prayers, like the pastors you see on TV. It was help thy unbelief. Because if I could not switch that wrong mindset, like Bill and Andy said, I'm not going to get to $1 million law firm.
Yeah.
And so I had to pray my way through. Now, hard work, faith without works is dead. Let me add that,
Yeah.
because you just can't just Jesus, 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 and think that you're not going to get, hard work and dedication to come with this. But I believe that, and this is not for everyone. Everyone's not a Christian, right? Some people have probably built their law firm and don't even know the Lord. But for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. And when I say my house, I'm meaning my law firm.
Hmm.
I don't push my religion on anyone, but my staff knows that I love God. They know that I can tell them one thing and it happens. Just a couple weeks ago, I said, we're about to lose an attorney. Everyone's like, Deidra, please quit speaking this into our lives. We had an attorney resign the next day.
Wow.
I don't know how I know these things, but you know what? Every time we lose someone, Jeff, one of the things Bill Hauser taught me, he said, stop fretting over when people leave your law firm. That means that there is someone better to be replaced. And
Yeah.
I just started believing that. And I believe that to this day. And you know what we have now? Someone left our law firm that only had a couple years under her belt. And then we have an attorney that we hired yesterday, and he starts Monday. He has 26 years of family law.
Wow.
So I believe,
Significant experience upgrade there.
absolutely.
So, and looking back to last year, were there any decisions that you made that you think contributed, other than, of course, you're going to these mentor and masterminds? Were there any decisions that you contributed that you would attribute to having such a significantly improved year over the year before?
Yes. And so what happened was SMB has many components within their organization. And after you get to a certain amount, they definitely recommend you hiring what we call a fractional CFO, because I
Uh-huh.
didn't have that. And
Okay.
so they said, Deidre, you're at this certain amount. And they believe in me. I don't know if they treat all their clients like this, but I have their personal cell phone numbers. They're like my little big brothers because I'm older than them, right? But they call me up and they call me up and they said, "Listen, Deidre, you are ready for a fractional CFO. Now this is more money, but we're making good money." I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh my God, what can they teach us that we went from 100,000 pretty much to 751. We got this." But that's the wrong mindset, because that's where people get stuck, because now you're not suffering. You're not suffering with, robbing Peter to pay Paul and Paul to pay Mary and Mary to pay Lisa. You're not doing that anymore. And in order for me to continue to grow, again, I had to take the advice of my mentors and coaches. Let's get a CFO. And not only that, is that I began to put my law firm administrator in training classes to become the COO of the law firm.
Hmm.
So she was taking even more pressure off me in regards to operating the business. And I can't remember the name of the guy. He was the COO for 1-800 Got Junk. And I can't remember his name right off the top of my head. But I put Desiree and I said, listen, I would like to have my law firm administrator join your team. And he says, "Well, Deidre, what is your revenue, right?" And I told him, at this time what my revenue was, and he said, "You don't qualify to be part of my group." And I was like, "Well," and this is what I told him. I said, "Well, next year I will." The next day, he inboxed me back. He said, "You know what? I thought about what you said. You can't become part of this group because you have to have a certain income." But he said, "I do have another group that would allow your COO, well, your law firm administrator, to be trained by other COOs on how to help you operate a law firm." So I had to invest thousands of dollars into Desiree, into training. And
Hmm.
so that was the next component, getting people trained, because many times we want to invest in ourselves. I'm going out to these mastermind meetings and I'm investing myself lots of money. But in order to have your team grow, you're going to have to invest in them as well. And I had to bite the bullet and I said, listen, if I'm going to invest in you, Desiree, I need your full commitment. And she was always fully committed to the law firm. And the things that she was bringing back from learning from the COO, the former COO of 1-800 Got Junk, she was coming and teach me. And it was times where, and she is not a yes ma'am. She is not a yes person at all, because you can't have yes people on your team
Yeah.
or you will not succeed. You gotta
Right.
have you gotta have strong people on your team. And there were times she said, Deidre, you're wrong. and this is not the way that we got to do this.
Those
That
teammates
was
are so valuable, aren't they?
they are so valuable. But I had to eat that pill. I had to swallow my pride and say, you know what? If I spend all these thousands of dollars to put her in these classes, and she's learning from the former COO of 1-800 Got Junk, I probably need to listen.
Wow.
And that's
So
what we did.
smart.
We put her in classes. We got the fractional CFO, and we just started continue to work and continue to hire. So
Yeah.
we have one, two, three, four. We have five attorneys and four paralegals, five attorneys, which includes myself. I don't have a caseload,
Yeah.
and we have five individuals in intake, and we don't
Are
plan to
these
stop.
direct hires? Were you hired, or are these you're still working with the vendor?
Three other individuals are in Ghana.
Okay.
And they're with the vendor through a attorney assistant, and then
Okay.
two individuals are here in Indianapolis.
Wow. Okay. So when you said they're in Ghana,
Mhm.
are they just doing intake? Or are they doing sales as well, like consults? And
No, so we have two forms of in our intake department. We have our intake specialists who they're kind of hearing the stories, making sure that this is a case that we can take, making, people are not calling from North Carolina thinking that we can represent them, and
Mhm.
getting them set up to talk to what we call our closers, our
Okay.
consultation specialists, but we call them our closers. And so once they qualify the intake specialists, the three individuals from Ghana, qualify them that, yeah, these are cases we can take. We don't have any jurisdictional issues. These are real issues, real cases that we can handle. And it's family law, not, business law or
Yeah.
whatever. Then it's set up to go to the closers. The
Okay.
closers, they are not giving legal advice. They are just simply listening to the case, letting them know a little bit about the firm, letting them know our record of success, and letting
Mhm.
them know we're going to set you up with whether that's Valerie, Justin, Stephanie, or our new attorney Jerry. Um, and then those individuals, those potential clients, then go to the attorney, and then they tell their case to that attorney, and the
Okay.
attorney gives the legal advice, and that's where everything
Wow. So
begins to.
do your closers quote the fee, or is that reserved for the lawyers? They
No,
do.
they
Okay.
they they do quote the fee, and the reason why we decided that our closers need to quote the fee, because why get them all the way to the attorney and waste the attorney's time, and
Correct.
they're talking about things, and at the end there's like, oh, I can afford it. So
That's so
they're going to
smart.
know that how much we're charging for the first retainer up front before they even get to the attorney, because we don't have our attorneys there to waste time. We got to bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Deidre, as you look out into the future, where do you see the firm going? What's your vision?
So my vision, I have copycatted this vision. My vision is to have a law firm similar to Mike Morris's law firm. In fact, when I met Mike Morris, I went to his law office. His colors are black, white, and red. At the time that I met him, my colors was just black and white. And we have now incorporated red because the law firm was so beautiful. And it's a
Wow.
power color. It's a power color, which was also from our marketing department. They said that we needed another pop. We needed some color in there.
Yeah.
And so my vision, Jeff, is to model my family law firm like Mike Morris's law firm.
That's
I don't want to
awesome.
be a
Yeah.
small, I don't want to be a small or medium-sized law firm. I want to be a large family law firm that has 25, 30 lawyers, and I want to do things that people have not heard of in the state of Indiana.
Yeah. Wow, that's terrific. Do you plan on staying in Indiana, or do you see yourself branching out into neighboring states?
No, I think I'm going to stay in Indiana.
Yeah.
Well, but if somebody want to marry me and take me to a different state, who knows? That may be an open door.
Wow. Wow, thank you so much for this sharing your story and being so raw and authentic
You're
you
welcome.
as you laid it out. I've just loved hearing it again. I know we talked a couple of weeks ago whenever you reached out to me. I want to let everyone know. So Deidre, Jen Gore connected us. She's a mutual friend of ours, and she said, you got to meet Deidre. So Deidre and I got on the phone, and I think we reserved 30 minutes and we ended up talking an hour, and it was just a delightful conversation. And so we're looking forward to getting together at some point, maybe getting our teams together next year and see where that takes us. So thank you for
Absolutely.
coming on the show today, Deidra, and sharing
Thank you.
everything.
Thank you, Jeff. I want to say thank you again to you. Like I told Jen, I said, Jen, you got to find me a family law, mentor, because I love all my PI mentors, but it's just something about when you have a family law mentor that's, we understand our struggle with family law. It
Yeah.
it means it means something very special. And so we just said, you know what, we're gonna always keep Jeff at the top of our mind. We want to come visit your law firm. And then we found out you're all virtual. We was like, we were so hurt and disappointed.
Well,
But
we'll make it happen at some point. Yeah, I would love to get our teams together. That'd be a lot of fun. So,
absolutely.
and how would someone get a hold of you if they wanted to ask you questions and reach out to you?
Sure. So I'm located in Indianapolis, Indiana, and the law office is called the Law Office of Deidra N. Haynes. The phone number is 317-982-7396. Again, 317-982-7396.
And also, I have a website that's a passion project for me to help family lawyers. It's called jsterlinghughes.com. And I'm going to have parts of Deidre's story spotlighted on that, with obviously a link to this podcast so you can, see her story and get to know a little more about her. So if you want to know more, go to my website, and there's a lot of stuff in there for family lawyers to really try to help every family lawyers grow their practice. So, well, thank you.
Thank you.